Hey, small groups. My name is Jonah, and I serve as the missions pastor here at Vista. And I'm excited about these few weeks that we are working through our Go series to start off this year, and in which we're going to be talking about what it means to go to our neighbors, our city, and our world as we seek to live and share the gospel. So, through the series, what we're trying to say, and the overarching theme, is that we understand that our entire lives and our entire identity is based on being sent. That God has sent us out into the world to tell the story of Jesus to those that we come into contact with. On Sunday, Austin started the series off as he talked about going to our neighbors and being on mission for our neighbors. Austin raised Mark 12:28 through 31 as an explanation of what it means to love and serve our neighbors. In this passage, Jesus takes all the commandments of the Old Testament and compiles them down to two commandments. So Austin said there are 613 commandments in the Old Testament, and Jesus said the most important things, the two most important commandments, are to love God and love your neighbor. And so Jesus was boiling everything down in the Old Testament to these 2 points, loving God and loving people, essentially. Later in the New Testament, when Paul is writing to the church at Rome and the church at Galatia, he actually takes it even a step further and says that in all of this, in all things, to love God means to love your neighbor. And so he wasn't saying that what the Old Testament said wasn't important, or he wasn't throwing what Jesus himself had said out the window, but Paul was making the claim that loving God means loving your neighbor. He was making it as real and as simple and as personal as possible. Paul is explaining that when we say that we love God, we express that as we love our neighbors, the people around us. And on Sunday, Austin kind of challenged us to consider this idea that what if the idea of loving our neighbors wasn't necessarily a metaphor? A lot of the time when we hear this idea, we like to boil it down to, oh, that's just a metaphor for loving everyone, that we're supposed to be nice and kind people. But Austin said, what if when Jesus said this and when Paul wrote this, it wasn't meant to be a metaphor? What if it was meant to be real? What if our job is not to seek to love the whole world, but to faithfully love the people in front of us? And this is kind of a weird idea to think about, but Austin said, the problem is that what we find is that when we set out to love everyone, we really love no one. We can say that we love all of humanity, and it's easy to do that from a distance, but the truth is we aren't able to love anyone when we say we love everyone. Loving everyone from a distance is a lot easier and a lot less awkward than seeking to love your neighbor, the people that live close to you and that are in your close circle. It's easier to say I love humanity than saying I love the person across the street from me. And so Austin explained that there isn't a single place in Scripture in which God says that you are responsible for literally loving every person in the world. There's not a single instance in the Bible where God says your job is to love every single person. But there's a lot in the Bible about loving your neighbor and loving the people that are directly in front of you, that are around you, and that you interact with on a daily basis. And so we've been called to love people that are in front of us, and this can be a lot more difficult than loving humanity itself. It's weird, it's awkward, it's messy to love people who are close to us rather than people who are far away. The action step this Sunday that Austin gave us focused on the idea of what do you really know about your neighbors? The people that live in your neighborhood or your apartment complex, what do you know about them? And can you list 3 things about them? So I'd say tonight or today in your small group, talk about that. If you're able to do that this week, to go through that list that Austin gave us and see what do you know about your neighbors. Talk about that. Talk about if it was difficult, if it was challenging, and what you learned from that. So a few questions for you as a group to consider tonight. We'll work through these, and you guys feel free to pause it. Hopefully my face doesn't look too funny, but feel free to pause it and talk about these questions as we go through them. The first question is, do you know your neighbors? Like really, do you really know your neighbors? If yes, talk about what meeting and building a relationship with your neighbors was like. And if no, what obstacles prevent you from meeting and knowing your neighbors? The second question is, What do you think about the statement, God hasn't called us to love the whole world, but to faithfully love the people in front of us? What would living that out look like in your life? Third, do you find that it's easier to love everyone from a distance than love the people in close proximity to you? Why might this be the case? Fourth, what do you see as potential opportunities for you to engage your neighbors, the people that live close to you, this year? And last, do you feel comfortable sharing your faith with other people, such as your neighbors? And how can your group help to challenge each other to grow in your ability to share your faith with other people around you? Thank you for joining us as we kick off this Go series, as we seek to be a church that's for our neighbor, for our city, and for our world. We're excited to journey along with you in this.